Okay. So, welcome to How Small Business Owners Can Sell Better and Sell More. We have two of our very own SCORE Boston mentors, Beverly Gottlieb and Dick Rossman. We're very happy to have them with us here today to talk about selling. They're both experts in this topic and have a lot of information to share with you. Dick, go ahead and go to the next slide. But as we get going, I want to talk to you about all the things that SCORE does, just to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the things we have to offer. One is the information for small business owners and those that are getting started on our score.org website. You're going to find lots of great information, other recorded workshops. You're going to find templates that you can download. You're going to find articles to read, blogs, podcasts, all kinds of really great information. So don't hesitate to dig around. Even on our score.org/Boston homepage, you're going to find success stories and information about our clients and information about our mentors. Just a lot of really wonderful information. The other way we share information to the small business community is through our workshops and webinars. We are just getting started for the new year, and we're very happy to be offering a really exciting complement of topics. Many of them are brand new for us, and we're really excited about bringing those to you. And you can find a listing of those. They come to you through the newsletter. You can also find them on the website, and we also do announce those through social media. Should you like to follow us on social media, we also on our social media links will post different podcasts and videos of our clients as well. So look for those. The most important way that SCORE helps the small business community, at least I think so, is through our mentoring. Dick, you want to go to the next slide? Our mentors are volunteers, and they come to us from all different fields of business with lots of different experiences and skills that they want to share with you. We work with folks that are in all stages, whether you're in the, is this right for me, to the, I'm, heavy into planning and getting things going, to those that are already in business, and to those that are getting ready to move out of their business, whether it's selling or passing it on to someone else. So we work with from the beginning all the way to the end. Our mentors work as a team. You'll be assigned an initial mentor, and as your needs change, other mentors will be brought in to share their skills and experiences with you as well. If you haven't had a session before, a beginning session is going to be 30, 45 minutes-ish, depending on how many questions you have. They're going to give you homework, and they're going to give you things to think about, things to research, to help keep moving you forward. And that is their goal. They're going to want to know about you. They're going to want to know what your goals and challenges are, and they're going to work toward helping you be successful. Go ahead. So getting a SCORE mentor is very, very easy. There's several ways on the score.org website. You can seek out. One of them is the box where you just put in your zip code. That will match you to the chapter that is nearest you. And then you will be asked a couple questions, and we'll use that information to help recommend a mentor to assist you. And so it's very easy, and I strongly encourage you to consider getting a mentor if you don't already have one. So we do have a pretty decent crowd today, so we are going to utilize, I would love to utilize the Q&A button, please. It is on your Zoom bar. If you could submit your questions there, because if you put it into chat, sometimes those things can get a little bit lost. Chat is great for general questions, and I will try and answer those as we go through, or if you have a comment, no problem. But if you have a specific question, put it into Q&A. That'll allow us to get through the questions. We do have a very large crowd today, and we'll do our best to get through as many as possible. So I'm going to put into the chat, though, information about where to find this recording later when in 1 to 2 business days, so that you can watch it again if you should need to. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenters so we can be on target and keep moving forward.
Afternoon, everyone. My name's Dick Rossman. I'm here with my partner in crime, Beverly and Gottlieb, and we're going to be presenting today how small business owners can sell better and sell more. Um, why don't we start by Beverly? Why don't you give the group a little bit of background about yourself, and then I'll do the same, and then we'll move on.
Okay, let's see, I attended both Babson and University of Pennsylvania Wharton School. I was an accountant and took 2 weeks off and literally started my company. I did insurance planning and benefits planning, and it was mainly a sales organization. I started it from zero, no help at all, and raised it to the point where it was bought by a publicly traded company. So I have a lot of experience in how to generate a business and how to generate sales.
Great, thanks, Beverly. Um, my background is that my career has always been in small business sales and marketing in the New England area. I started in a substantial commercial printing company, a family-owned commercial printing company where I was for 20 years as VP Sales and Marketing, and became Sales and Marketing Vice President for a software startup. I've worked with other manufacturing companies, professional services companies, been a sales coach and a sales trainer in the greater Boston area. And I retired about 8 years ago and have been with SCORE since then. Before we get into the first slide, I want to just get a little feel for who's in the audience and what are the businesses that you folks represent. So if you could put a couple words in the chat as to what it is, what's the product or service that your company sells. And Teresa, if you could just maybe just read off a few of them, not all, there's a big crowd today. Just read off a few as they come in, please.
Yeah, we got wine, we have career and life strategy, advising, project management, event planning, project management, jewelry, student staff retention consulting, industrial decarbonization consulting, pigmenta permanent cosmetics, catering. Oh my gosh, we've got everybody today, I think,
Okay.
Dick. We've got yeah.
Just as I thought, a wide range. Well, that's great.
Yes.
And you're all looking to increase your sales and grow your business. Super. Hope we can help. So let's make sure that we're all on the same page as we get started and know the difference between sales and marketing. So marketing is everything that you do to make people aware of your product or your service. So all your advertising, all your social media, any branding, any webinars, any speaking engagements, your podcasts, any direct mail, a trade show that you may attend. That's all marketing. And those are all crucial and very important activities. And they set the stage for the sale. But it's sales that gets the order. Sales is what is going to putting the dollars in your pocket. And so as we all understand that, make sure we're all thinking about going in the right direction. Many of you, I'm going to guess today, are what we call solopreneurs. You're the owner and you may be the only person in your business. And that's great, but that means that you're wearing lots of hats. And one of the big hats that you're wearing is a sales hat. So if you own your business, you are in sales. And many people, I've had many SCORE clients who are in that position, but they've got an engineering background or a technology background, and they don't have a sales background. And that's okay, because what we're going to talk about today are some processes that hopefully will make folks like you feel more comfortable in selling. One way that you may become more comfortable is not to think of yourself as a salesperson. But I want you to think of yourself as a problem solver, because that's really what the sales process is. And we're going to talk a lot. You're going to hear a lot about that today, solving how your product, your service solves problems for your customers. But first, we've got some perceptions that we need to overcome, because salespeople, the word salesman, salesperson doesn't have a great perception in our community. What are put in the chat just a few of the words that you, when I say salesman, what do you think of? What are some of the things that come to your mind when you hear the word salesman? Teresa, you just want to read a few of them out?
Pushy, slick, people, con men, consulting, high pressure, used car salesman, devious, annoying.
That's enough. That's enough. That's what I thought I'd hear. And so what we're not hearing, I think I did hear the word consultant, and that was good. But you don't hear helpful, cooperative, problem solver. You don't hear those, and that's unfortunate. But that's that's what we have to overcome in this selling process, because we don't want to be perceived as that devious, slick salesperson. Because selling is a very important service. We all should take pride in being a proper salesperson, because the selling process is going to benefit both us, the salesperson, and especially our customer, the buyer, because again, our customers have a problem that you, as the owner of the product of the service, can solve, and that's really important. So remembering that you have a valuable service to offer is really crucial at all times here, because you need to remember people want to buy, but no one wants to be sold to. So we have to make this process not feel like that it's high pressure, that we are offering a valuable service, and that we're helping to solve a problem that our customer has. And in order to do that, you in your salesperson role really need to have confidence in two different ways. First, you've got to believe in the benefits that your product or your service can bring to your customer. You need to believe that you indeed can solve your customer's problems. That's crucial. And you also need to believe that when you're in the selling situation, that you're going to ask the right questions, that you're going to uncover what the prospect's problems are, and that you're going to close that sale. Because if you don't think that that's going to happen, then you've got what we call, then you're never going to be a successful salesperson. You may have what's going on in your head, what we call head trash. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase, but head trash is what happens when we just think about and imagine a situation that has no basis in reality, and it works against us at all times. So, for example, you're in a networking event and there's 20 people in the room, and everyone's there for the same reason, to meet everyone else. And you look across the room, and there's someone there standing there, and they're not looking at you. They're faced off to the side. They've got their arms crossed. They're not smiling. And you think to yourself, "Oh, I'm not even going to talk to that person. They're not friendly. They're not going to want to talk to me." Well, there's no truth to that. You don't know that that's the case. So we need to get that out of our heads. And that person may have been a great prospect for you, but you've already working with one hand tied behind your back with that head trash. So get it out of your head. But you do need to know that you're not going to turn every prospect into a customer at that time. Their problems at a specific time may not be great enough yet for them to want to spend their resources, their money, invest their time with you. And that's okay. But your job is to stay in touch with them in the proper way, so that when that problem does become large enough, you are top of mind, and they will go to you and say, "Hey, oh, remember that conversation we had a couple months ago? Let's talk about that again." The other thing in your salesperson role is what's really important, is to be able to separate your identity from your role. And what do I mean by that? your identity is who you are as a person. You're a father, you're a mother, you're a friend, you're a neighbor, you're a grandparent, whatever you may be as a person. And we hope that you always think of yourself in that capacity as a 9 or a 10, 10 being the highest. But today we're also talking about your role as a salesperson. And that's always going on as well. But in your role as a salesperson, you may not always think of yourself as having a 9 or a 10 day. Maybe you made 20 calls and no one picked up the phone, or a customer called you and had to cancel an order. So at the end of the day, when you thought about, well, how did I do in my salesperson role today? I was only a 5 or a 6. But that doesn't mean that in that same day, your identity wasn't a 9 or a 10 as the person that you know and think of, and how other people identify with you. But so the goal is then the next day to think about, why was I a 5 or a 6 yesterday? What did I do? What can I do better so that in my role as a salesperson, I can move up and become that 8 or 9 or 10? Let's talk a little bit about who your customer is, because it's really important that you define who your target customer is and be specific. I've had a number of SCORE clients, and I ask them this question, and they say, oh, everyone. My product and my service can be used or would be interested by everyone. And frankly, that may be true, but it's not realistic. You can't sell to everyone. You can't, especially you can't market to everyone. So it's important that you narrow that down, and you can narrow it down by geography. Let's say you want to work people who are in New England, or your product, your service is only appropriate for men within a certain age from 25 to 45, or a profession. So for example, you want to meet HR senior VPs of HR companies who employ more than 100, who have more than 100 employees in New England, who are in the pharmaceutical business. I'm making that up, but that's a niche. That's a target. You can find a database of companies that are in those categories, and you can market to them. And what's more importantly, you can become what we call a big fish in a little pond. You can become that expert. You can become perceived as the go-to person for pharmaceutical HR managers in New England to go to, because you've taken over the market in that area. And that's not to say you can't work in other ponds as well, but being able to market to that specific pond is going to make your selling career a lot easier. Let me give you an example. I worked with a SCORE client who was a massage therapist in the Metro West Boston area. And she was she was very excellent at what she did. And her business was okay, but she had a lot of competition. There are a lot of massage therapists in the Metro West area. So she became certified as an oncology massage therapist, starting to work with cancer patients and alleviating some of their pain with her massage. And so she started to talk to physicians, hospitals, medical practices, and be referred to, have those organizations refer their patients to her. She became extremely successful, and became known as, one of the top-notch massage therapists for cancer patients in the greater Boston area. That's how you go from create that, make your pond smaller and become that expert and become recognized in your pond.
Hey, Dick, can we go back to that slide? I don't mean to interrupt
Yeah.
yeah, when you say use geography, gender, age, profession, interest, and condition, what do you mean by condition?
Oh, what do I mean? you're in, let's say you're a physical therapist. You're working with people who are injured, athletes who are injured. So a condition of your prospects. They've got some specific condition, whether it's physical, mental, that you want to appeal to. And so maybe to narrow your pond down, you want to work with only with athletes who are physically injured, as opposed to older people like me who have a bad back. I'm making this up, but that's the idea in using condition as to sort out who your prospects might be.
Thank you.
All right, value. What's really important to be considering here is that this selling process, is not about you. And it's also not about all the wonderful features that you provide or that you provide from your product or whatever your service is. We want to always be thinking about this from your prospect, your customer's point of view. What are their problems? What are their specific problems that you can solve? Again, it's not the features that we want to be focusing on, because frankly, your prospects, they don't care much about your features. They care about how those features can benefit them, how those features can solve their problems, not what they are, what they do, and how they can solve your prospects' issues, concerns. And you also want to be focusing on what sets you apart, what distinguishes you from your competition. There's this phrase, unique selling proposition. So how do you uniquely solve your customers' problems? And be able to answer the question, why should your customer buy from you? And this, what you uncover here, this information, these reasons, that should be the focus of all your messaging. Your website should focus on the problems you solve. Your elevator should talk about your problems. I always like in an elevator pitch, start off with the phrase, I help people that, or I work with companies that need ... But again, it's not what you offer. It's not all those features. It's I work with companies that need help in ... And make that the focus of your conversations with your customers and how you visibly are seen there. But what we find out is that your prospects, they aren't going to reveal right out of the chute what their real problems are, because they don't know you, they don't trust you yet, and they don't. So they're going to be very circumspect. There's always this wall that people put up in front of a salesperson. And what the salesperson's goal is to break down that wall. And the way to do that is by asking the right questions. And these questions we call pain funnel questions. So you need to be asking these questions to uncover what the real problem is. And that real problem usually is emotional. There's some emotion that is this problem. And I like to use this phrase fudwaka because it's fun to say, but it also stands for fear, uncertainty, doubt, worry, anger, concern, anxiety. So when you ask some questions and you get a response such as, I'm worried that if I can't solve this problem, or I'm afraid that, or that shows that you've asked the right questions now and you've uncovered what that real emotional problem is. So let me give you an example. You're selling human resource benefits to small business owners. So in insurance, disability, maybe smoking cessation programs, weight loss programs, physical fitness programs. Those are all benefits that a small business owner may want to offer to their employees. you're at a networking session, you start up a conversation with a woman who owns her own business, and you tell her what you do, and she says, and you tell her what you do by saying, I help companies that need, whose employees perhaps aren't satisfied with the benefits that they're receiving. And she says, I'm thinking about adding some new employee benefits for my employees in my company. Well, the typical salesman's going to, at least mentally, going to jump up and down and say, that's what I do. That's what I do. I can help you. And I'm going to suggest don't do that at all, because you don't really, you know nothing about why she's interested in this situation. And the only way you're going to find that out is by asking some of these pain funnel questions. So, and you want to be asking these questions with a lot of empathy. Oh, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Wow, that sounds serious. How long has that been a problem? What have you, how have you tried to solve it? If you can't solve this problem, what do you think is going to happen? And by asking those questions, what you may learn is that this woman has lost several key employees to her competition, because their benefits that they offer are much better than the ones she's offering. And she's afraid, here's that Fudd word, she's afraid or concerned or anxious about losing more employees that are going to put her company in jeopardy. Now, she didn't tell you that right away, did she? You had to ask her these pain funnel questions, and at the end of that process, she said what she's really afraid about. And so now you're in a position to say, oh, I've worked with a couple other business owners who've been in that same situation. Perhaps we should meet, and I can tell you how I help them, and we can see if it makes sense to keep talking. What is she going to say to that? Is she going to say, oh, I don't think that's a good idea? Hardly. You've proved yourself. You've shown interest. You've qualified yourself. And you're 95% sure of getting that follow-up meeting. Let's talk a little bit about price, because many people think that if their price is lower than their competition, that they're going to sell more. And I'm going to say to that, baloney, because low price doesn't necessarily equal best value. And what we're talking about is offering and providing value. And if you've properly established the value by asking all those right questions that we just did with those pain funnel questions, and you've qualified yourself and you've established some rapport with your prospect, and learned to understand what their problem is and presented a solution or two, I'm going to suggest that price becomes much less important to the final decision. And so when a prospect complains that, oh, sorry, your price is too high, then maybe you haven't done a good enough job in asking the right questions and in the selling process. Because it's really easy for a prospect at that time to say, oh, sorry, I'm going with someone else who's less expensive. Your price is too high. Because usually you can't prove that. You don't know it. And it's really easy for your prospect to say that. It's as a way of, getting rid of you, so to speak. But the real issue may be that you haven't asked the right questions. You haven't established that rapport. You haven't qualified yourself. You haven't shown that you can be a solution. And so they simply say, sorry, you're too expensive. A few words about your competition. It's really important to know who your competitors are. Who else is offering, is selling the same kinds of products or services as you? And you need to learn about them. You want to certainly be looking at their websites. If you can, perhaps you want to be talking to some of their clients, or ask maybe some of your clients if what they know about them, because you want to learn how to differ yourself from them. What's their messaging, et cetera? What do they say? And how you can differ yourself so that when you're in that situation and someone says, oh, I'm talking with you and I'm talking with XYZ, you can say, oh, you know, they're a good company, but they do things a little bit, we do things a little bit differently than them. And here's why I think we may be a better solution for you. You also want to make sure that you know that your competitors are smart and they're capable, and you never criticize them. I learned that lesson the hard way when I was a rookie salesperson in the commercial printing world. I was having a conversation with one of my good clients about a new project, and he said he was getting a quote from my company and from another company. And I said something that wasn't especially appropriate or complimentary about the other company. Well, I didn't get that order, and I didn't get any business from him for about a month. And finally, I asked him, you know, what's going on? And he said, well, remember a few weeks ago, we were talking about that job, and you said something not very nice about a company that I work with, and I think that company is fairly capable and does a good job, and I'm happy to work with them. So I didn't appreciate your comments, your negative comments about them. Well, I didn't make that mistake again, and we got back on track, but I learned a lesson there about not criticizing your competition. So as I say, you want to understand where they're coming from, what's their messaging, what are the arguments that they may use when they talk about you, and be prepared in advance to have comments about your competition. One more point before Beverly's going to pick this up. Keep in mind that, as we said at the beginning, you are your company's salesperson. It's one of the most important hats that you wear. And it's really important that you take the job of selling seriously. You can't wing being in sales. It's not possible to be a successful salesperson and just sort of wing it. And so what I'm suggesting is that you set some time aside, put it in your calendar, let's say every Monday from 9 to 11, or maybe twice a week, whatever. But don't override it in your calendar. And at that time, you want to use that time for following up with maybe any inbound inquiries or any phone calls that you got, checking on your present customers and making sure they're satisfied, seeing if there's some other opportunity that may be coming up where you can help them. Making calls, sending out emails, creating an email campaign, whatever it may be. Set aside time to do it, and don't just say, oh, I'm really busy today, I've got this fire I got to put out, and when I do that, I'll get back to selling. That's not going to happen. So you got to take it seriously and focus on it. And you also want to set goals and objectives for yourself. And these goals want to be SMART, S-M-A-R-T goals: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. Those are SMART goals. So for example, you want to grow your business by 10% in the next 6 months. You want to increase your sales by 10% in the next 6 months. That's a SMART goal. It's specific. You can measure against it. Have to think it's achievable. It's certainly relevant, and it's time bound. So always have a SMART goal or two in going on. And at the end of the webinar today, I'm going to come back and talk to you a little bit more about how to actually hold yourself accountable and create that recipe for success in order to achieve those goals. All right, Beverly.
Thank you, Dick. So the first thing I want to start with is my favorite mantra. Successful people do what others aren't willing to do. And whenever you don't want to put in the extra time or make that difficult phone call, go back to the mantra, successful people do what others aren't willing to do. I want to touch on what Dick touched on earlier, that you really need to define your customer. The better you define your customer, the easier it is to find them, to know where to find them, what to say to them. You want to know all their problems, not just the problem that you're solving, but as much as you can about them, they want to be seen. It will help you create rapport. It will help them to feel that you are an expert in their industry. So it'll help you to see similarities among them, which also helps you in the way that you talk to them to make them feel. And a lot of times when people are first starting, you don't know who your customers are. So you're really using what I call the shotgun approach. Even if you're starting that way, trying to feel who your best customers are, really look at who's buying from you and their similarities. And you can also have more than one customer segment. I worked with a locksmith, and his cash flow was the college students who locked themselves out on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. But his real prospects were building managers, property managers, where there were many different locks that he could be working with. And as you can see, there's two totally different approaches, totally different ways of finding, totally different ways of marketing to these type of people. Another thing that people sometimes don't do is look for the unaddressed segments. People seem to follow the same path. Now, the unaddressed segment may not be your only segment, but it could be a very profitable segment. When I first started working, people said, "Oh, why would you work with startups? They're too small. You won't make money." Well, prospects grow. And by the time they became the plum clients that everybody wanted, I was already doing business with them and couldn't be dislodged. So it is sometimes very good to think outside the box as long as the segment is large enough. Next slide. I think you've missed a slide. Well, I'm going to go and do my slide.
Where are we, Beverly? Wait a minute.
Who do you know make a list? There we are.
Sorry.
What you want to do is, it's very easy for people now versus when I first started. Either get a notebook, open up an Excel spreadsheet, however you think is best for you. But go through your phone contacts, go through your Facebook followers, go through your Instagram followers, go through LinkedIn. Whatever you need to do to see as many people that you have a connection to, and then list out who will buy now, who can buy later, and just as importantly, who can provide me with referrals. Referrals, referrals, referrals. Anyone can provide you with referrals. It can be friends, it can be family, it can be clients, it can be vendors, it can be people who do not buy from you. And that may sound strange because they didn't buy from you, but maybe there was a reason they could not buy. They loved you, they loved your product, you did a wonderful job, but they don't have the budget right now. Or they've gone through the entire process with you and then find out that they have to buy from their brother-in-law, the owner's brother-in-law. So a lot of times they want to pay you back, and the way that they can do that is through referrals. The thing you have to do is be good at getting referrals, because a lot of people say, "Well, who do you know who could use my product or service?" And the problem at that is people are just going to stare at you. Every name that they've ever known is going to go out of their mind. What you need to do is paint a picture for them. Who is your best prospect? Describe it to them. Also, go to their LinkedIn before you ask them for a referral. Look who they know. Have a list. So let's say you wanted to meet the CFO at a company. Have a list of CFOs that you think would be appropriate and say, "Do you know this person? Could you refer me to this person?" That's what I call top down. You're actually speaking to the person at the company that you want to talk to. But there can also be bottom up. And what that means is you like a particular company, don't know anyone at that particular company. They may know somebody at that company who may not be the person you ultimately want to talk to, but that person could meet with you and maybe then refer you up to the person. So it's your way to get in. It's also the way to get their contact information from that person. So top down, bottom up, referrals are extremely important. They're a gift. You cannot rely on them. You have to keep prospecting. And you never know who your next best customer is going to be. I was in surgery, I was in the OR and actually did business with the OR nurse. So you actually never know. If you go to conferences and trade shows, because networking is very important right now. Again, people on their cell phones, you don't always have the business phone that you can reach people. So networking is very important. If you go with somebody from your company so that there's, let's say, 3 of you, and you sit at a table, then you're only a table of 10, you're only going to meet 7 people. If you split up and each of you sits at a separate table, you're going to meet 27 people. So what you want to do is maximize the amount of people that you meet. If you're at a conference, don't run back to your room after the speakers. Go to the bar. Drink an iced tea, a soda water, but keep talking to people. Spend as much time talking to people as possible. Even if you're not a breakfast person, if there's a breakfast, be the first one there. Spend time drinking coffee with one group, then excuse yourself, go to a table at the other end of the room and have another cup of coffee or some breakfast with other people. Your job is to maximize the amount of people you're exposed to and always take their information. Don't just give your information. It's also great if you can have someone else fill your pipeline. Example, you're a florist or a caterer. Associate yourself with a wedding planner. I had a CFO who used to go to 4 new companies each year. She used to bring me in. Then the next year she would move on and I would remain with that company. So I always was guaranteed 4 new clients a year. That was enormous. It was wonderful. Also, if there's somebody in a that you sell to the same people, share leads. As I said, the wedding planner fills your pipeline, but what about the caterer and the florist? Why can't they share leads with each other? Also, again, think outside the box. I would go to the VC's Christmas party because I worked with startups. Where were they all gathered? The venture capitalists Christmas party. My clients, I would ask them to bring me to their VC party. They were so kind. I did a great job. They liked helping me. I would go to the VC parties. At the party, I would talk to somebody. I'd say, "What do you do?" They would tell me. I'd give just my elevator pitch, exactly what I did. And I would say, "Do you have a card?" That's what we used then. And they would give me their contact information. And I would say, "Do you mind if I call you on Monday?" And I would call. They don't want to talk about your product at that time. Okay. They're there for a shrimp and a cocktail, but they'd be happy to talk to you in their office on Monday. Next one. Social media, inbound marketing. So important these days. Let's talk a little bit about Facebook. It's great for visual products, jewelry, clothing, food. What's also important is to join groups and chat rooms. I had one client who became an expert in a chat room and was able to get business from that chat room. If you look at different groups, you may see different networking opportunities. Really try and use Facebook for what it's for, which is exposure and seeing different things that you can get involved with. LinkedIn is amazing for a lot of people. It depends on your industry. One, it works for, quote, priming the pump, which is giving people names so that you can get referrals to them. But LinkedIn also can get you a great exposure. There are specialized tools to do this on LinkedIn. SCORE actually has complete webinars, an hour-long webinar on how to utilize LinkedIn. A LinkedIn is a way to get in contact with people that you can't get their email address, definitely look at those webinars. Instagram, follow people and be followed. Um, it's great if you can get an influencer to notice you. A lot of influencers want to be paid, but there are still a lot of people who have a lot of clout that just notice you. I had a client whose people went on Instagram and TikTok and talked about her. She didn't even know that they did this. They did the marketing for her, and her business increased exponentially. Cold calling, people laugh. Cold calling does work. And buying lists. Getting in touch with people is very important. I mean, email campaigns are very important. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. A lot of times people want to email something first, but that follow-up phone call is very important because, as Dick said, you want to hear their problems. When they're reading an email, you're not hearing their problems. So communication is very important. Blogging and doing videos, again, a very great way to get exposure, to be seen as an expert. Email campaigns like Constant Contact, they can work wonderfully, but define your customer. If you don't define your customer well, you might get 500 leads. Embedded in that 500 might be 100 really good sweet spot leads, and then you get 10 customers from it. If you had defined your customer better, you might have just gotten those 10 sweet spot leads and then still gotten the same 10 customers. So it's better to save the time, the money, and hear a lot less no's by defining your customer better. Again, think outside the box. I worked with startups. I actually found a list through the Secretary of State that listed all the startups. So I got to them. They were all different types. I picked the types I wanted to work with, but they didn't have any phone numbers. And at the time, if you went and you called information from your home, it was 10 cents. And I had to call it about 400 times. So I would go to a payphone and stand there and call information 400 times. And as I said, successful people do what others aren't willing to do. I was able to retire at 50 after selling my company to a publicly traded company. So it was very worth it for me to put in that extra effort to always have prospects. I always had people to call. I had somebody at SCORE tell me that their client delivered flower baskets. They were in the Quincy Crown Point area and they were a dentist. And so he wanted to build his practice, a new practice. And so people want to go in their lunch hour or they want to be local and just take an hour off from work. So this was the way he got his name known. So sometimes you have to think outside the box to actually come up with a unique way to get noticed and exposure. The key is exposure. So as we talked about coming up in a Google search, there is a banner that comes up, and those are through a behind the scene auction. And most people on this call are not going to be interested in doing it because it's a pay per click. And so if your banner comes up and they click on you, there's a charge every time they click on you, and it may not result in a conversion to an actual sale. What's really important to you is the organic showing up at the top of the list. This is called SEO, search engine optimization. Whether you do it yourself or you do it through hiring somebody, it is important to have the keywords to be the website that gets Googled and ends up on the top. We do entire webinars on this, but this is something mattering on your industry that is extremely important. Just because you build a website doesn't mean people are going to be able to find you. And the key is to have as much traffic go to you as possible. So SEO is something you should concentrate on and take the time to learn or to hire somebody to help you with. Next slide, Dick. Direct mail. People laugh. Direct mail works for certain industries. Again, it's thinking outside the box. If a window washer sent me a card, even if it was in January, I'd save that card for the spring. I don't know a good window washer. I would go to Google. And maybe the local guy, the guy's just starting, the guy who's really good, the guy with better prices, the guy who can come quickly is going to be found through that direct mail piece. Trade shows. Don't just talk to the attendees, talk to the vendors. When people are in the workshops or whatever, and you've got the quiet time, remember, you're both there selling to the same people. So it makes sense. I had a client who did high-end instruments, musical instruments. He associated himself with a high-end amp dealer that he met. It made perfect sense. If somebody's willing to spend that much on an amplifier, they want a really good instrument. So think about who your strategic and complementary partners are, and actually try and create a relationship where you can share leads. Speaking engagements and educational seminars. I think speaking engagements, again, depending on your industry, are really important, but you want to maximize your 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 time. Because if you go and you speak, but you don't get the information from the people who attended, then you haven't really maximized why you're there. You want to at least have a list of their email addresses or some ways that you could potentially follow up with them. One of the things I describe is to put a card, a nice printed card on the seats of the people who are coming in, and maybe have boxes for additional information with certain subjects that you touched on. Or a box also that said, would you like to be part of my email list and receive my newsletter? Or would you like a 15-minute free consultation? It's very important because when these people give the cards to you, those are your hot leads. They're not just the people who came to listen, they're people who are actually interested. Also, always stay afterwards. Even if you're the middle speaker, say, I'm going to be here at the end of the presentations if anyone needs to or wants to talk to me. And say, I'll also have some cards so that if you don't have time after the presentation, you can take my cards, and I welcome speaking to you and answering any questions that you might have. Again, maximizing your exposure to the people in the audience. Other things, festivals, open markets, wonderful for food products. Somebody brought me something from Rhode Island, some baked goods. I would drive to Rhode Island just to get these baked goods. They were that good. And I never would have known. I mean, but it's a maximum exposure. I know I keep using that word, but that's really what you need in sales. You want opportunities. Next slide. And Dick talked a little bit about the elevator speech. Mine was, I do insurance planning and benefits planning for the high tech and biotech industry. I love working with the founders of the startups. So not only did you know exactly what I do, you know who I want to be talking to. So it's very helpful if you can actually define who you're want to be talking to, because that person might know somebody. And even if they're not appropriate, they might have a referral for you. I worked with a woman for about 45 minutes getting her elevator pitch perfect. And she was going to a networking event that night. And I said, okay, say it to me. And she said, I can't do that. And I said, what do you mean you can't do that? If you can't say it to me, how are you going to say it to other people? And so we practiced once, and it was rough, and we practiced again, and it got better. And the third time it got better. And then I dropped a pen and I said, okay, pick up the pen and say it, because it has to be that much in your soul. You have to know what you're going to say so well that it literally flows. because you don't want to be paying attention to what you say, be paying attention to what they're saying. You want to ask probing questions. You want to say, well, who's your current vendor? What's problems have they solved for you? Do you like them? How long have they been with you? Um, and ask them about their business. What type of problems are you having in your industry? Very globally, maybe they don't want to talk about their specific problems. And then you say, well, since you know them so well and know their industry, say, did you know that some people have this happen or have this happen or have this happen? Disturb them a little. Try and see what their problems might be, and then listen and develop solutions. You want to talk about what their problems are. You don't want to sit there and say, I do this, because they're going to say, well, that's good, and walk away because you haven't seen them. You haven't heard their problems. And always ask for the follow up, whether it is to talk to them next or to take the order. I once stood up, put on my coat, and somebody said to me, aren't we supposed to file some paperwork? I'm like, oh my goodness. So, and always try and get the next meeting established at the end of your meeting, because it's harder to chase them to get the appointment than to say, let's establish something 2 weeks from now, and I'll call you at the beginning of the week just to make it sure it's a good time. Next slide. Telephone calling works. It does take longer. If you get 2 or 3 calls and it doesn't work, don't get frustrated. It doesn't mean you have a bad list. It doesn't mean you're not saying the right things. If you do 100 or 200 and it's not working, then there's something going on. And if you have a good call, think about what you said in that call and what you did. It's almost like a debriefing. What did you do that really worked for that particular call? You always want to have a positive message, a solid message. At this time of the year, I had windows in front of me. You could see your own reflection because it was dark outside at 4:30. I noticed I was smiling. People can hear you smiling. You have to not look at making a call as a chore. If you say, oh, I've got to make these 10 calls before I leave, or I said I would make these 10 calls, at 9 o'clock, you might as well not make the calls, because you need to be in a good mood to make the calls. I was always in a good mood because to me, it was an opportunity to make money. It was never a chore. It was something that was creating business for me. It was an opportunity for people to hear my story. You need a script, but you don't want to sound canned. You want every call to sound distinct. You don't want to put on a high, chirpy sales voice. That's not going to work. You want to talk to people as though you're talking to a friend. You want to talk to people as though this is the only call you are making in the whole day, and that they are the most important person that you are going to talk to. Focus on that one call, even if it's leaving a voicemail. Focus on what you're saying and that person, and sound like you really want to talk to them. Realize that the best time to call is not always the best time for you. It may be early in the morning if you're trying to get through an assistant or a gatekeeper. It may be late on a Friday. Again, successful people do what others aren't willing to do. Next slide. Your goal is to get a meeting, not to sell your product. What you want to do is ask questions, do not sell. You want to create rapport. You want to build empathy. The longer you can keep somebody on the phone, the more likely you're going to get an appointment. You want to educate, not sell. Say things like, did you know? Rather than just kind of blurting out your benefits. Did you know that this could happen? Did you know that these products can do that? And if you try and get an appointment and they say no, always ask if there's a better time to call back. You don't know what's going on in their life. They could have just gotten a call from the principal of their child's school. They could have lost their key employee and they're shorthanded. They could be moving the company the next week. This could be the busy time of the year. This could have been, they just signed a renewal contract with their vendor. You don't know. Always ask, is there a better time for me to get back to you? And then call them. Your timing is not always going to be perfect on your first call. And be organized and have a client management system. It's very important that if you're making the effort to make that first call and you have a call back, to actually know when to call back and make that call. Next slide, Dick. It's very important that you establish rapport. I did very well with very analytical people. If they had the MIT ring on their finger, it was called the brass rat. If I walked in and they had a brass rat on their finger, I knew I had a new client because I knew how to make that person feel that they could trust me and that I was the best person that they could possibly be working with. So creating rapport, take the time. It's important, and have it be sincere rapport. See them, talk to them, and use body language. A lot of times, if you create rapport, what people don't realize, because they're unconsciously going to follow what you do. So if you're wondering if you create rapport, touch your face. You'll be surprised when they do. Or put your hands on the desk in front of you, and they'll follow doing that. So that way you know you've connected. And really, it's the art of listening. You have to learn to listen for their problems. You have two ears and one mouth, use them in that order. They should be talking 80% of the time. You should be talking about 20% of the time. Because if you don't find a problem, then there's no sale. And as Dick talked about competition, there's a line that I always use because I don't want to call in competition, but I want to know if they're talking to somebody else. So I always say, though most people only meet with me, have you talked with anybody else? I'm going to say that one more time. Though most people only meet with me, have you talked with anybody else? That way you know if there is going to be any type of competition and you can be prepared for your next meeting. Next slide. It's really important that you talk actually to the decision maker. A lot of times when you go in, somebody will say, because you want to talk to, let's say, the engineer, and then he's going to talk to the CFO if you're selling a software package, that you get to talk to the CFO, the final decision makers. You know your product inside and out. Okay, you can explain it to the engineer, and actually by the time you leave, they've forgotten 50%. 3 days later, when they meet with somebody to discuss your product, they forgot another 20%. Also, the pain points of the person you talk to may not be the pain points of the person that actually makes the decision. The engineer might think, wow, this would really make my job easier. But the CFO might think, well, I'm already paying this guy. And what else is he going to be doing unless I can get rid of his position? So, what's the return on investment? It's really important that you maybe bring the engineer to talk to the head decision maker. Maybe it has to go in front of a team. You want to then present to the team. The harder thing I think to ask for is what the budget is. And it's important that you know, because you may structure your proposal or what you're presenting a bit differently. Maybe you do a roll in, a phase in of what you do. Maybe you do a base plan with add-ons. So you really want to try and find out approximately what they think they're going to be spending. And one of my favorite lines, because you need to know when they want to make a decision, is what needs to occur for you to move forward? I'll say that one again. What needs to occur before you move forward? Really important. That may be the spot where you actually find out, oh, well, it has to go to these 3 people to make a decision. Or, well, we're waiting for venture capital money to come in. Or our contract just renewed, so I guess we're going to have to talk, in a year. It's really important that you know what is preventing them from moving forward now. Um, Always have a pipeline. Even if you are so busy you can barely think. If you don't have a pipeline, there may be a time when you're going to have too much time to think. So you can never be too busy. Worst case, set an expectation, say we're going to be delayed 6 months before I can do this, but I'm going to say we'll start this in X period of time. And then the most important thing is make the sale. Dick, back to you.
Thanks, Beverly. Beverly, stay on for a sec, because it occurred to me that you were doing a lot of talking appropriately about face-to-face meetings, but we're probably going to be experiencing as many Zoom meetings now as face-to-face meetings. Face-to-face meetings are more difficult to organize naturally, and so we ought to be talking about how to establish rapport via a Zoom screen. Any thoughts on that, Beverly?
Yes, you can easily establish rapport because it's what you say, it's your mannerisms, it's leaning forward, it's showing interest, it's making eye contact through Zoom. You're not looking around the room, you're not looking at your notes, it's the questions. That's what really creates rapport. Um, Knowing what the person is experiencing, knowing what they feel, knowing what they're seeing. That's really a lot of times before you put up what we have as a PowerPoint here, where we're small, is to not put up the PowerPoint, ask a bunch of questions, build the rapport when you're face to face on a large screen. I think that has a very big impact on how to present on Zoom.
Great answer. Thank you, Beverly. I knew I could count on you for that. Just to wrap up, gonna have a quick conversation about goal setting and accountability, because it's really important that you need to be able to track your progress to your goals. And so let's talk about creating a goal. So an appropriate goal here could be income. Let's say you want to earn 20% more money this year than you did last year. Or sales, you want to grow your sales by X% over a period of time. Or number of clients, you want to gain 10 clients in the next 10 months, whatever it may be. Those are all appropriate targets to be used to create your goal. But in order to, after you've created your goal, you need what I call a recipe for success. And the recipe is going to revolve around what what the action steps that you need to do in order to get that sale. How many calls or meetings or proposals that you need to make or need to write. So what are the behaviors that you need to do to make those connections with your prospects? So that connection could be a phone call. It could be meeting people at a networking event, using targeted mail to get a response, emails, responding to inbound inquiries. So those are all behaviors that a salesperson responds to in order to make connections with a prospect. So let's use a specific example here. So let's say our goal, and it's a SMART goal, is I want to add 12 new clients next year. And here we are in January. What better time to create a goal for 2025? So if I want 12 clients in the next year, that means on average, I want to add 1 new client every month. And I know just from my past experience, or I make an assumption, either way, whatever works for you, that if I have 4 face-to-face or Zoom meetings with a qualified prospect, one of those is going to turn into a new client. That's just from my past knowledge. And so therefore, I need to have one of those prospect meetings every week in order to get one new client every month. I'm going to turn one of those 4 prospects during the month into a client. And so I also know from my past experience that if I have 25 legitimate conversations or meet 25 potential prospects, however I may be meeting them, if I make 25 connections or have 25 solid conversations, one of those is going to turn into a meeting. And that's my recipe. If I make those 25 connections every week, that's what I need to be doing. Then one of those connections is going to get me a meeting for that week. And for 4 weeks of meetings, one of those is going to turn into a client. So boiling down my goal to my recipe for success, what I need to be doing is focusing on meeting people and making sure that I meet at least 25 people every week. And that will lead me to achieving my goal of 12 clients in the year. So thank you very much. I hope we've been helpful and you've learned something about improving your selling skills. We're happy as SCORE counselors to hold you accountable, to help you set up your goals. And we're happy to answer any questions. Teresa, what do we have?
Yeah, how does one approach the funnel with a physical product?
It's same process. It's the same. You've got a physical product. They're the same questions. You're assuming that perhaps your prospect either needs your product or they have one from your competition, but it's the same process. If that person would like to get in touch with me, I'd be happy to meet with them and go into detail, because I need a little bit more specifics about what their product is.
How much should you talk about yourself and your credentials to gain a buyer's trust? Elaborating on that, how much should you talk about your client buyer's pain points, and how much should you talk about yourself? You have what they need to solve their specific problem in your sales copy and on your website.
It's all about timing, because what you want to do is, one, build that rapport, find their problems, talk about the pain points, and then you want to talk about how and why you're the solution. So you do get to that part, but it's after they've been seen, then it's time for you to be seen. One of the easiest ways to visualize this is that if you're at a restaurant with somebody, and I used to hate doing lunch for this reason, they would talk in the entire time, then the food would serve, they'd be quiet. Now it's my time to talk, and I never got to eat. So that's the most visual way of thinking of how this works. They talk first, you talk second, and yes, you build the solution around what they've said.
I agree.
You mentioned buying lists. Is this a list that you create yourself? Do you buy it from somewhere else? How do you buy a list?
It depends what your industry is again. That's very broad. You can create the list yourself. Sometimes that's one of the best ways of doing it, but there are sometimes through Constant Contact, you can get a list. There are other sources. One of my clients, we literally Googled like there was a list, it just turns out online, of the top 50 largest companies that, do what she was interested in. So she got a list from that. The hard part is trying to find the right person within the company. So it is work. And again, I hate to keep using the phrase, but successful people do what others aren't willing to do. My client that I was working with who said that said, well, that's going to take a lot of time. And I said, yes, but that's part of the process of selling, is getting the lead. So do take the time. If you can get the names, do take the time. But again, online is a great way to try and find lists of people.
Two other thoughts. The Boston Public Library has a wonderful business business library within the
Yes.
public library, and there are a number of different directories of databases that they have access to, and they can help you hone down your prospect categories and create an actual database of lists. That's one. Another is the Boston Business Journal. I think they continue this every week. They have the 25 largest law firms in New England, or the 25 largest real estate companies. Anyway, and they produce a book of all the lists that can be purchased. So that's depending on the region, and there are business journals in many of the other larger cities around the country. So that is another way to create your own database of lists.
Okay, how do you know how much to solve their problem? Like drop teasers before they sign a contract with you? How far do you go?
Oh,
That's a really good question.
yeah, I
I
think
had a
you've got to go pretty
consultant.
far.
Yeah, I had a consultant who basically told them everything they needed to do rather than hiring them to do it. So you have to explain your process if it's that. And it's kind of teasers. It's saying, I can solve this. I'm not going to, and tell them how you go about solving it without solving it, if that makes sense. But for most things that you're doing, the product solves itself. It's very touchy when it's consulting.
I find that most people they want someone else to solve their problem. They don't, even though they could do it themselves, they don't have the time. It's not what they do. It's not their business. Um, and so many people are afraid to reveal what they would do, how they would solve the problem. And I think that's frankly it's not necessary, because your clients aren't going to do it, and they're going to prefer to hire someone else to solve their problem who has the expertise, who's done it before.
Honestly, this one's for Beverly, but I think it answers itself almost. You say, have you talked to anyone else? She's saying this attendee is saying, have you used any other product for this to help you enter into a conversation for your for a product instead of
That's excellent. That's excellent. Like I said, it depends on the industry. You want to find out a lot about their past experience if they're hiring you to do something. Have they hired somebody before? Not just are they talking to somebody now, to see what experience it was. Because you can say, well, what did you like about working with that person? What didn't you like about working with that person? What could have been improved on? That's giving you what to say that about yourself that you could do better. So there's a lot you can get from asking past questions to get good answers about what you need to do.
One of the pain funnel questions is, what have you done to try and solve this problem? And you can, from that response, you can go in a lot of different directions, like Beverly described.
Okay. This is going to be the last question. What if you think their problem is needing a lower cost?
Say that again, I missed it.
What if you think their problem is needing a lower cost?
I mean, they can't afford you?
I'm going to assume that that's what that
If
means.
that's it, then what you don't want to do is simply say, oh, okay, I'll sell to you for 10% less. That's a big no-no. What you can do is perhaps divide up your service. So instead of offering 6 months, offer 4 months at a lower price, or not offer 100%, or break up the price and say, all right, well, we can start by doing instead of buying the entire 4-part series, we'll buy parts 1 and 2, and for 50% of whatever is. In other words, to divide up your offering, and and let them buy it in pieces.
All right, that was fantastic. Thank you very much for Dick and Beverly, and thank you to all of our attendees today. We look forward to see you at workshops in the future or as a mentee. So reach out to us and we can help you connect with a mentor. You can go through the score.org website to get that mentor. So we look forward to.
Or if they want, they can put their information in the chat.
Yeah, I've actually already captured a handful of people, but it's easier if they just email me too as well, because we're gonna have to close this here in a second. So outreach at scoreboston.org or through the website, and we will help you out. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.